Let's talk imagery. Images, psychological warfare. Let's discuss it. Greetings to all, peace to all. Give honor to Source, to the Creator, the Most High. Whatever your higher power is, give gratitude. Let's talk imagery. So I want you to ponder on, especially as I was walking, I want you to ponder on what is a healthy image for you. Then with that healthy image, do you have a healthy image of you in your mind? If so, where does that belief system stem from? Who and where does that belief system, where is it rooted? Who have taught you your image? And I'm asking this for everyone, especially my women. And the reason I say this is that we're asking sometimes for respect from those who have tried to suppress everything about your anatomy, your autonomy, your genetic makeup, and so forth. You're asking for solutions from people who have never cared, from a society, from structures, who have never cared for your well-being, for the well-being of your children first, so they're not going to care for your well-being, for your inner child image. Who is upholding and pushing what type of image of you? So to ask for respect or solution, even from these said corporations, businesses, career settings, and so forth, especially, let's use darker women, for instance. You're asking to be prioritized or even encouraged or empowered in settings where these very structures, these very places, most don't even care to reflect or even empower who you are as a woman, what you're here to do, what you came to do, and even the depths of even what you represent. And that's on all levels. Now, in this entirety, when we're talking about the matriarchal women in itself, in its entirety, for some of you who the status quo or even what the image represents in a country, to even feel a sense of empowerment, which has created a false identity around women's empowerment, and I don't mean anything feminist, but I mean in a sense of empowering women in its entirety. How you doing? So with that, ask yourself, what does your image look like? And the beauty of why I'm saying this is because men are very visual creatures. So when you look at the settings of how women are pushed, the narrative, and how they are so-called false empowered by their lower nature, or by a place, let's just say from a place of where they create life, but there's no empowerment centered around the beauty of life itself. So this is why you can see your corn pushed so much heavily so and introduced to younger boys and men. And being that you have a society who don't prioritize the well-being of how those young men who grow into adulthood, because of the stigmatization or the stigmatizing or the stigma around even how men should be or young men should be, or even how the stigma around how it's weak for them to even show emotions. So with that, they've been displaying this wounded masculinity that again was and has been rooted in their childhood experiences. So when you're talking about image, I always come to my mother's women in the matriarchal, because ask yourself, when you look at this wounded patriarchal system, when you look at the system in its entirety, how are all women displayed as a sense of the power empowerment? For my darker women, you know specifically how your image, depending on where you are, your demographics in certain countries, how you have been dehumanized, devalued in so many ways. And then for my lighter shade women in the USA or in other countries who unconsciously and consciously use their light-skinnedness or different pigmentation or lighter shade of pigmentation as a false sense of empowerment, and even have this, not status quo, I don't know why that word keep coming up, but have this innate sense of insecurity deep within them that they never express or never talk about, but have this almost hatred towards women that are darker that sometimes they don't even acknowledge or care to share. And they know much so when it comes to their image, it is highly praised more than a darker woman. And so in certain settings, career-wise and so forth, a lot of women that are darker can relate to that. They can relate to being mistreated, mishandled, devalued, ostracized, criticized in so many different ways. I've seen it from experience. I know people who have went through it. So that being said, imagery. I ask myself, even when the thing about imagery, I've been wanting to talk about this for so long, is that most people don't even realize. I'm glad I saw 20%. Most people don't even realize that when you even look up the fact of how lighter shade people or people of a lighter pigmentation, typically people describe them as Caucasian or white, depending on, and that doesn't mean it has to be their nationality, but we're just making it relatable. There's so much emphasis on not only their happiness being a priority, but when you actually Google a lot of things, the image of people that are that lighter pigmentation, if you want to say peach tone or, so forth, I saw myself having to realize, like, wow, Google or wow, other places, when you look up something, is that you normally see, or you will see if you haven't caught this, so much of happiness being displayed, or so many things when it comes to even how their families or their so-called, if you want to use the word culture, if you want to use the word, well, just basically their image is more, how could I say, is more of a priority above people that you would see darker. When I do a lot of Google searches, when I do a lot of, searches on things, when I type in, like, let's say a children smiling or a children something, the first thing I see is people that don't look like me. And the reason why I say this is very vital, because imagery is very vital. And, with that, it's we don't realize how much this plays on our psyche, how much this plays on imagery. Is also things that we take in as food. So again, the imagery, how has your intake of what you have seen? I was just in the library a minute ago, and most people probably don't know, due to certain demographics or due to what they grew up in, and it's no one to blame from this, but it's almost like a social study or social observation when I go around in places. And I'm sitting there and I see this elderly lady, and I kid you not, if I could have recorded this out of respect, no, I tell myself, but she had a magnifying glass with glasses on, and I'm assuming that her eyesight was very challenging, or maybe possible cataracts or something. And she was looking at something on the phone. And I've noticed this as a very much trend, but it's very much, again, imagery and what we take in. So I'm watching her listen to something, not only listen, but also repetitively look at a video, and it was something related to news, and it was a shooting or something. And I can just hear it, but at the same time, I didn't want to see it. So I'm sitting here telling myself, like, wow, like, what, how many times does she need to watch it? But she had to be in her 70s or something. And this brought to my awareness about this right here. A lot of our elders, and I don't think a lot of people realize the importance of how much we know, how much image or picture like holds the energy of things what we see. As I'm watching her do that, I realized, like, I met a lot of elders, let's say from the 50s to the 70s. They watch a lot of news. And what I'm noticing, and the reason I'm saying this is because imagery has a lot to do with well-being. Now, my demographics and what I grew up in, and I see a lot of people that are of darker shade, they have this, I don't know why I want to say rhetoric, but they have this almost codependency towards negative things, or things, not even negative, because I don't want to misinterpret that word. Not even negative, but they have this attachment, this codependency towards almost like the worst possible outcome. Or, I don't like to use terms to where it can, I'll make it relatable. Let's just say, when I say worst possible outcome, you can say bad or good, but on the energy aspect, it's more so focusing on the stagnation or being stuck in the loop of feeling like that's all there is to their world. What am I getting at? My grandmother would watch the news so much. She was at a time, as I've said before, a victim, in a position where she was shot and she survived. And I noticed this thing, that she would watch a lot of crime videos. She would watch a lot of things that involve like homicide, murders, and certain things. And I'm almost telling myself, imagery, the power of what we see, the awareness on what our children see, the awareness of all this shit. And I've noticed when you're talking about the old world, as I say, and the transitioning from the wounded masculine of knowing that a lot of our grandfathers, great-grandfathers, who were a part of the wars of the world, or were a part of the dysfunctionality when it came to the illusion of trying to fight for and sacrifice their well-being to protect a country that obviously did not protect them. And knowing so-called veterans who have experienced this, who are suffering now from, some may use the term as PTSD, or repressed emotions, repressed memories of what they've seen, and were traumatized, only to return to a country to be treated like shit. So a lot of them, depending on their experience, go through a lot of things where they're left, which again, I've spoken about how men's mental well-being is not a priority. So a lot of you already know, a lot of grandfathers, a lot of your fathers who experience these things, they have so many things they distract themselves from. And a lot of people don't realize like how much the imagery and what they've seen has affected and still affect their well-being to this present day. And this is why they take on so much workload. Every time I'll say 80 to 90% of the elders that I speak to, when I'm telling them about my situation, when I'm expressing to them about what it is I'm going through, their first priority isn't a well-being, isn't about their emotional state, their mental state. And then you can see it most of the time in their physical state because of even the medication that they take. Because again, I approach things with a holistic approach, for those that don't know. And what does that mean is that when I look at the negative and positive, is like seen as a battery post. You can't have the negative without the positive. You can't have the dark without the light. The yin and the yang aspect. That being said, I don't see myself as half of anything. Even when it comes to the concept of marriage, even when it comes to the concept of me bringing half of this to someone, no. What I realize I'm returning to it and pioneering and returning here through from what I've experienced from my childhood into adulthood, which I look at both as a yin and yang aspect, negative and positive, because it's like the childhood aspect could be that negative aspect where you're learning from that mother. You know, depending on if she was there, even if she wasn't there, you still subconsciously or took on an image or took on something that you will live out in your adulthood. And living that out is a form of masculinity. And being that we have been in a wounded society, we have been in a society where most of our women, modern day women, are hyper independent, and which is a reflection of the wounded feminine, but is displayed through the wounded masculinity that we see paraded and praised through society right now. And, you know, which leads to down the road of self-sabotaging, which leads to a lot of women avoiding or evading their emotions, you know, their intuition. And that, again, that emotional resonance and that nurturing that they're supposed to be giving to a lot of the young men now, who predominantly, some depending on the demographics, are most likely going to deal with mental health issues, become homeless. And these are statistics from single parent things. The percentage could have changed, but, you know, dealing with, you know, harming themselves, the S word, and, you know, a lot of things that basically a lot of people don't know the depths of. When I'm speaking about imagery, when I'm speaking about the fact of a lot of these elders are a representation of the wounded society. And me speaking up and prioritizing the well-being as a man, it's almost taboo or alienated for the modern day world, who eventually, you know, as a shift happens, some may call it the awakening or rising of the divine feminine and masculine, we'll see a change and shift of how much so that not only does the youth seeing what our elders went through, not only does the youth have to know the importance of prioritizing their well-being, those who are said in between, like me in my 30s, and those that are in their 40s, who are also prioritizing that. So again, imagery is like so vital, because again, as just a darker man, as a representation of the patriarchal, speaking from my experience, there isn't a emphasis or a lot of empowerment around the imagery of a man that's darker like me. So naturally, I'm going to relate and connect to those boys and see myself in all men and boys, but mostly my audience naturally, you know, from my experience, will be connecting to those darker boys who mostly come from a single parent home or were abused and so forth. This is a part of imagery. And when you're talking about not only being affected by things like that, they also, as they grow into adulthood, they're in such a wounded society, and depending on the image that they've received through the false empowerment of what the patriarchal actually means, because of, again, the stigma of how we're taught not to acknowledge and express our emotions as men, you're seeing a lot of young men walk right into that same ideology or belief system, that when you don't, that they don't feel a sense of belonging. And that goes back to the concept of even the root chakra aspect of feeling a sense of being seen. So imagery is so vital, because especially as a darker man in a country or in places where the image of who I am has been so focused on emasculating, eliminating, devaluing, dehumanizing, castrating, you know, so many things that plays on the psyche of men, little boys that grow up. Not to mention the music that we're given, not to mention the false idols, the false leaders who have no fucking connection to self. Their connection is so wounded and so focused on logic, how could I say this? Using one side of the brain, basically just one-sided. It doesn't reflect at all wholeness, and that's what it is that I speak about in returning. Because again, for me to walk into this what we call adulthood, we have gotten away from so much of our childhood that we cannot even connect to the fact of who and what planted those seeds of not just so much imagery, but also the seeds of deception, the seeds of being misled and manipulation and so forth. So with that, now the shift is among us to where, you know, bringing the awareness around the fact of the wholeness on, you know, how could I express this? Like the wholeness on, like, I wouldn't be who I am if I did not go through those lessons, if I did not have that mother and father or people in my life where through their belief systems, through how they even viewed, you know, imagery is so vital. It's like how even my mother viewed men based off her experience with men, how my father even viewed himself. And so with that, whatever that image is, and depending on how he, you know, typically in the last couple hundred years, you know, the image of even darker people in the country, from what they have went through, you know, when you're talking about racism, when you're talking about just attacks on the darker man's masculinity, and even how the women, most of the, depending on their upbringing, you know, most of these young men, their mothers don't have an empowering or powerful image of themselves. So they're actually planting seeds of false empowerment or projecting whatever their experiences are onto those young men. And so then they grow up with not only this image in their mind that this is how all men are, or this is how my mom saw it, and depending on if it's a single parent home, most of them, again, will only have the image of women who were hyper masculine, who were hyper independent, who were never known what it was to be in their femininity in a healthy, holistic way. So most of those young men were in enmeshment relationships. Most of those young men that we see, millions, are don't know what it is to be self-sufficient or take care of themselves or honor their emotions and so forth. So again, you're seeing a lot of elders who, every time I see them, they're distracting themselves with work. And that's the old world narrative, because it doesn't prioritize creating around your life or prioritizing your well-being and creating from that. And that's what you see displayed when I create my arts, when I write the books. You know, that comes from channeling the very feminine principles and attributes that, whether it be from an unhealed and unresolved place, it's still from a creative place. And so that right there, I realized the attack on the woman, the attack on her femininity, affects the femininity and the masculinity, and how the boy who grows into a man performs in life, progresses on a world stage, or in just his life experiences. This is what you have today. So now that we're reversing the curse, or the curse has been lifted, and being able to see the gift that has always been within, most of the men, modern day men, no matter their status, most of the elderly men, their focus has been so much on imagery, how they appear to life, how muscular they are, how much money they have, you know, all these things, surface level, but there's no emotional depth to them. Those men do not come from emotional intelligent women. It's not to say those women are not emotional intelligent or advanced or valuable or beautiful inside and out. It's just a lot of what you see today, a lot of these women, their inner world and what they've been through, what they did not resolve, whether unhealed memories and emotions, matriarchally or ancestrally, was passed right to their sons or projected. And so again, imagery. When you're looking at the modern day women, the present women, not all, because I know some sisters who have went through their inner work and healed or even cleaned so tightly to their spiritual practices or to who they are as confident as women, like the powerful women that they are, which who go through attacks as well, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, by trying to even take back their power. Because they know that they are the first teachers. They know how important they are to the foundations of the world. So that being said, when you talk about, again, the women, most of the women here who are so hyper masculine or so hyper independent are truly disconnected from their femininity. And the beauty of this is that they're able to heal only if they're willing to face the shadows of themselves. Because and the beauty of this is that that's the only way our generations and the foundations of the new world will live in peace and harmony and will prosper beyond on 10% beyond what we've seen on the physical plane. This physical shit that you see on this earth and what we've been experiencing will go to the root of the matriarchal, no matter how we see it. No matter how someone, I don't give a fuck what leader, what politician, what anybody try to come along, what pastor, anybody else try to come along and tell you that if they're not empowering you, if they're not encouraging you to face those things, and they keep trying to give you these religious figures, keep trying to, because that's their mission. That's their mission. They keep you, especially as women, because again, mostly modern day women who are willing to take accountability, who are willing to see their role, who are willing to realize that a part of their children progressing, living out a more peaceful and harmonious life reflects a lot of what they display and how they nurture those kids. It's not too late. Again, the imagery of how you have been portrayed, especially darker women in the country, how much your image has been hidden of the great mothers, of the great women and grandmothers, the ancient ones, and even the warriors that came before you. How all of that was hidden purposefully by a patriarchal system who abused their power, who tried to use your power, siphon your energy to uphold a false image of even what God, the Creator, or the Most High represents. This is why the emphasis on removing so much of what the matriarchal, the feminine principles, which we all have, has been so focused on. And so now, a part of the water rising, a part of natural disasters, is a reflection of that which is feminine. Things that are ever changing, the evolution. So again, every image of a woman here, so some of these women in the society right now, and y'all cannot say your image is the same as women that are darker. Let's be fucking honest. I came from darker women. I talk to women about this all the time. You cannot say that your sense of how your image plays a major role in how you become and how you actually, your self-esteem, how you move, how confident you move, the identity that you develop around this. And some of y'all don't even realize there's lighter shade women or different shades, that you actually have developed a false identity of what it is to even be a woman. There's no sense of connection or even unity or even healthy connections with women that are darker, because a lot of your careers And a lot of what some, use that term white supremacy, what it upholds is everything but people that are darker. And a lot of your careers, a lot of your schoolings, a lot of your universities, a lot of what you accomplish was centered around fucking hatred of yourself and of other women. So again, imagery. When you Google a lot of stuff, you're not gonna see a lot of stuff that empowers people that are darker. I ask myself, how the fuck can you even Google photos of people who have been whipped, who've been hung from a tree? How the fuck should that even be possible for people to look at? And how, ask yourself, as humans or whatever the fuck you want to be, whatever you want to call yourself, how can you even think that that doesn't run through your bloodline? And you pretend to be so passive aggressive to act like that don't exist, not only on the internet, but everywhere else. And then you teach your kids to continue to be passive aggressive of what has happened in the country. What has y'all only evolved self-hatred, what you want to call racism. You only evolved it. That shit still running in a lot of people's veins. And this is people of all cultures and creeds who also have used religion. These men, these people who also have used these images. Man, I keep trying to tell y'all, justice and divine judgment is coming to all who have tried to dismantle, dismember, devalue, dehumanize the feminine principle, the divine mother. All, even myself, I'm not exempt. I wouldn't be here talking about these very things if I didn't see the importance of how I realized that a mother that I came through only used the tools that she could have. And even herself, she couldn't find peace. Her inner worlds was in conflict. Her inner worlds, the house that she had within herself, the home, she never found peace. And guess what? She made sure I didn't either until I got into where I am now in adulthood and chose to seek it. And through that, the only way I could find that peace is to make peace with what I went through with her. And that is the feminine attributes. I had to make peace, the repressed memories and emotions of being abandoned in said areas. I had to make peace with the very things that the imagery that comes up in my mind, the memories. I had to cry. I had to feel very uncomfortable and still learning to get through that process and navigate it. So again, you're talking about grandfathers, grandmothers who have so many things repressed, the images. Y'all call it PTSD. A lot of those repressed memories, the things they want to ignore and they continue to lie to themselves, that create more blockages in their bodies, that create, keep them in stagnation, that keep that energy stored in their body, in their cellular structure, in their being. And this is how their being of life, how their life is displayed. They act out through the wounded masculinity. That's what you're seeing. So let's not pretend that the image of even what looks like me is empowering. I have to go search for it. Or when I do go search for it, it seems like it's destroyed, or it seems like it's misinterpreted, or it's misinformation. And that comes by the hands of people who are also darker. Don't be confused. And now that's what a part of the awakening is. A lot of us are coming into the knowing how powerful, not only how powerful we are, but ancestrally, the powers that be is also the powers, I like to say the powers that used to be, are still a part of the powers that once were and will be. Because it's all a transition. It's all a transition. You are a miracle. You are the one that's here to initiate. Let me see which percentage I'm on. 6%. You are the one here to initiate and to return to that very powerful place, to return back home, to fix the home that's what's inside of you. Again, imagery. You can sit there and the image come to your mind. That's internal. Your internal world also reflects imagery. Let me show you how powerful this is. When you look at kids in certain demographics and you're seeing what they're watching, and no one's aware, no one has this awareness around how and what they see, they become that shit. And if you think the powers that ain't used to be didn't know this, that wouldn't be an emphasis on certain things in the media. As I've expressed before, I know of people, fathers and mothers, who their trauma response or their triggering would be to watch something that reminded them of the childhood. Y'all don't even realize, like, bro, they would watch the news so much that that's almost soothed their fucking trauma. That's a trauma response. All those commercials, all that, what they call dopamine, all those things that pretty much are triggering things, only for it to come up. And you wonder why people abuse or have substance abuse. Because a lot of what they go out there and work and what they go out to distract themselves from is that very present moment, or that very fucking memory, or repressed memory or emotions that's haunting them. This is your nightmare. It's no difference in the collective right now when you talk about humanity, when you talk about whatever leaders, whatever it is. Imagine the energy. And this is what most people of darker shade carry as a collective. As a collective. Because if people of different shade, you're asking someone that's darker not to see someone else as, what's been given to us. I don't like to say slave terms and all that stuff, because I've known and researched and know exactly that a part of people who were held captive, that were people of different shades. But for some people who don't know who haven't got out of that mindset, some people I know that are darker want to have nothing to do with people of lighter shade, simply because their timeline or their mindset is not to be in cahoots or even connect with people like that, to avoid what people don't realize, to evolve past racism. If they truly knew how many people or their ancestry of who really put their people in captivity, imagine how many people mindset would change on how they viewed people of lighter shades or people of different shades in humanity. So that being said, as a collective, like someone who naturally, as a man that is darker, because some people will watch this and that's all they can see, and sometimes due to their experiences, they don't even know why they hate people that are darker. I wonder sometimes, what the fuck narrative do people of lighter shades have, or what really initiated you to even have, what I actually do know, to even have this hatred towards darker people. I don't think a lot of people know of lighter shade, that if you look at the origins of the world, and y'all don't know about the black hand that you don't see, which is a concept of fact of, if the origins and scientifically everything was created from darker people, and that's just science. It's not to say someone is superior, someone is better, whatever it is. All that shit is to keep people from getting along and living amongst each other. But I see why. Here's the code. People of lighter shade don't even realize a lot of the captivity that they're in and was almost sold into and to believe the illusion came from darker people teaching them. Some even may call it what? The Moorish or Moors or whomever, Spaniards. Okay, those people, when you look at everything, imagery, there's a reason why they gave you images, especially darker people, of people that predominantly look a certain way. There's no difference in certain religious figures. Because imagine if you got a religious figure that was darker most of your life. That right there gives you this, you don't even realize, a sense of inferiority that you took on unconsciously, to believe that you were inferior to someone. Just like giving people, well, most of this country is predominantly this because most of their fucking ancestors of lighter shade came here. Well, who navigated those ships? Who supported them? Darker people. They never tell you that. And here we are, keep thinking people have an advantage. Listen, It's much more deeper. The imagery is what you've been given. If you're not given a sense of empowerment through imagery, through listening, through hearing, through all those things dealing with frequency, baby boy, baby girl, in your adulthood, you're still walking with that little boy inside of you, that little girl inside of you. And then it all depends on how, even a lot of these elders, we develop our, the father is so important that we develop our self-esteem, because men are visual and logical. So a lot of us, by not having that father present, a lot of us had to father ourselves. And through that, we thought self-esteem and being empowered was to live in such a dysfunctional way, was to live in a way that did not reflect integrity, did not reflect respect, did not respect, and when you're giving from society things that, okay, 3%. When you're talking about most of men that are darker, who probably, depending on the demographics, come from single parent home, they've had to not only father themselves, but when I always told y'all men are ruled by Mars, and when you're talking about admiration and even respect, there is not a, how you doing? There is not a consistency. Think about this. A lot of young men haven't seen a consistent and persistent man in their life that reflects those core values of respect, admiration, and then the importance of what sex represents. They haven't seen that shit consistent. So guess what you get right now? That is the harvest that you receive. And guess what? And typically when those mothers are present and who don't see themselves whole, who don't honor honesty, which they're ruled by Venus, honesty, the pleasures of life, and what was the other one? Attention. If they haven't been getting attention healthily, holistically, and be able to enjoy the pleasures of life, because this is what a lot of elderly women, specifically of darker shade, haven't really enjoyed the pleasures of life to even enjoy their childhood. So why are we surprised that this is the fruit, what you see in the young ones in the world right now? There you have it, imagery, because that's all a lot of young men saw. So let us get some grace right now. Peace and blessings. Shalom. Part 2 coming. Ashe.